to the first Baraza of 2026. My name is Olumlona Afermungu from the Human Rights and Peace Center. I'd like to take this opportunity to invite the director of HURIPEC, Dr. Sinje Kabumba, to welcome you all. So let's welcome Dr. Kabumba.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. As Lona has said, and thank you, Lona, this is the first Baraza that HURIPEC is holding this year, I think, after the elections, if those could be called elections. But okay, after the process that we went through. Now, today's Baraza is an interesting one and a very important one. It's two in one. It's both a Baraza and a book launch. I'll speak briefly to both aspects of today's function, and before handing over to Lona to hand over to the panel. Now, we have Alicia as the moderator at Kwatse, and we have Harmon Asmeron and Sweetie Ogwal as who are going to be in conversation. Now, let me first say a few words about Harmon. She participated last year in the inaugural National Secondary Schools Moot Court competition that was hosted by HURIPEC at the School of Law in conjunction with Lex Amica. That was a very fruitful partnership, and that inaugural moot court, we think, is going to be the first of many, including one this year. And I know that there's representation from Mengo Senior Secondary School, and at some point in the book launch part of it, we shall hear from Mengo. But that moot was very important and very interesting because it was impressive to see young people articulate ideas around the Constitution, around the law, in such articulate terms, with such depth. And it gave most of us hope that when some of us are older and even more tired and step away from the stage, that there are young people who can take over the work. Harmon was the best oralist at that event. Yes. And I think anyone who watched the proceedings could agree that that was a very well-deserved honor. That led into further work with HURIPEC, including her being a guest participant at another event I'll speak about, the CAS, HURIPEC, Constitutional Law and Rule of Law Fellowships. These are fellowships that bring together students from first, second, third, and fourth year, students of law, and give them the space of a 6-month period to reflect on various themes about governance, about human rights, about the place of the law, the place of constitutions, the place of human rights in this world. Now, both the moderator and Sweetie happen to be members of that fellowship. And could I ask other fellows who are present to stand up? Just so we see you. And so I see how many of you turned up today to support the event. Yes, there you are. That's part of the inaugural group of the Human Rights CAS HURIPEC Fellowship. I present them to you. So as HURIPEC, we're really grateful to CAS for the partnership we have with them. Sam? Where is Sam? On my right, yes. Always looking for corners, but do not be deceived. The very thoughtful individual, he and the rest of the team at CAS have been very supportive to HURIPEC, and we shall be expecting somewhere along in the course of the event, the country head also to join, and perhaps say a few words at the end to a little bit about the work we're doing with them. But we are incredibly grateful for the continuing support that CAS renders to us, and the partnership really that we have. So you're welcome to the School of Law, and welcome to HURIPEC, and I look forward in equal measure with you to the discussion we're going to have on youth voices in Uganda's governance under the 1995 Constitution. I suppose in the spirit of the Vienna Declaration on Human Rights of 1993, that the discussion today will speak to the interrelated, interdependent, universal, and indivisible nature of human rights. That while we shall be talking about the place of the youth, young women, we shall also be necessarily talking or touching upon themes such as those covered in Article 20, the inherent nature of human rights, Article 21, non-discrimination, Article 23, the right to liberty, including of young persons who are trying to participate and what happens to them, Article 24 on their dignity, Article 26 in terms of the property, Article 27, 29 in terms of expression, Article 30 about education and the scope of that right, 33, the rights of women, 43, the extent to which human rights can be restricted, 41, access to information, 40, the right to work and how that has been impacted or when internet is shut down and all these things. So we expect, and I know we shall have, both in terms of the panel but also in terms of the plenary, a very thoughtful deliberation on all these themes that allow us to reflect as to the continuing relevance and importance of law and its institutions and equality in our country and in the world. And in the world, and we're in a world that is a very strange world now where nations are going to war, where the international rules-based order seems to be under significant challenge, where in certain countries there's a renewed call for nativism and parochialism, where there's somehow a suggestion that UK is for the British and US is for the, I don't know, it's a bit strange to be saying that on Native American land anyway, but Germany for the Germans. But it's on that note that I'm personally quite pleased also to see that in Uganda, among the number of things that we're getting wrong, one of the things that we're getting right continues to be respect for diversity. And I'm really glad to see the diversity here in terms of colleagues, brothers and sisters from the Eritrean community are all most welcome. Most welcome. So, I'm just about to sit down, but before I sit down, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of the parents of Harmon, Pastor Elijah Asmeron, and your dear wife, Mrs. Sarah Asmeron. You're very welcome. Thank you for lending us Harmon, a very resourceful young person, and from whom, as a country and as a world, really, I think we have a lot to expect from. Now, without any more boring words from me, I'll welcome you all to this Baraza, and I look forward to the deliberations. Santeni.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kabumba, for those wonderful opening remarks. At this point, it's my pleasure to invite the moderator for today, Ms. Alicia.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming today. Today I'll be your moderator for the event. My name is Atukwase Alicia, and on the panel today, it's a two-in-one baraza. We shall have the panel where we shall discuss the role of the youth in governance under the 1995 Constitution, and we shall also later on proceed to the book launch of Ms. Harmon Asmeron. Today on our panel, we have two panelists. We have two panelists and a guest. The first panelist is Ms. Harmon Asmeron, And the second panelist is Miss Sweetie Ogwal. And the guest is Miss Muhumuza Julia. Without further ado, I would like to introduce and give a brief background on the panelists. Miss Harmon Asmeron is a Form 6 student at Mengo SS. She's a debater, captain of the debate club. She's a public speaker. She's a writer, as we can see. She's a PR youth-led organization that is called Make an Impact. She's the captain of the Uganda National Robotics Club that got to represent in UK, in Switzerland, and later on in Singapore. Our second panelist, Miss Sweetie Ogwal, is a law student. She's a law student, a student leader, a well-known mooter who got to represent Makerere University in the All Africa Christ of Hinds Moot competition, where she emerged as the 6th best oralist in the competition, a Christian, and a student who is passionate about human rights, and a very good friend. Miss Muhumuza Julia is a very known, I don't know even how to describe her, but let me just start from, she was the best student at MOOBS in Haya. She had a first-class degree. She's the founder of the mentorship club, TMC. She acquired her master's in Oxford University, and she's passionate about the youth. For those who have known, she was a contestant in the national youth elections as a youth MP. And furthermore, I would like to beg your leave that I may sit as I conduct the panel. Thank you very much. Let me proceed. Okay, just to dive into today's discussion, I would like to invite Miss Julia Muhumuza to first introduce herself, and okay, I've introduced her, but let her talk about herself and what she has encountered in her role as a youth member, and also what she's really passionate about and what she would like us to take from this discussion briefly.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here. My name is Julia Muhumuza. I have recently participated in the youth or the special interest group elections, and definitely the Constitution provides for them. I ran, or I've been contesting as National Female Youth MP on independent ticket. So it's so important that I bring my experiences to this conversation. And then beyond the contesting in Electoral College, I've been in a couple of spaces that I think are also provided for by the legal frameworks of this country. UNSA, I've also encountered the National Youth Council, which should be spaces gazetted by the legal framework to have representation of youth voices at different levels of engagement. But I think for me, in terms of the conversation we're having today, it's bigger than whether they are provided for or not. In a country that has over 80% representation of young people, should it be a question of whether youth are represented through special interest groups? Like, do we still need affirmative action to be represented? If anything, we should have a couple of very many young people actually being at the forefront of representation, as opposed to what we see the cornering of, or we have put this in place, let youth be represented in such spaces, or we have put up this structure, let young people be represented in such places. What we eventually see, for example, the National Youth Council, eventually we saw that the National Youth Council ceased to be the National Youth Council because currently, I think last year, they aggregated all the special interest groups. So where you see National Women's Council, National Youth Council, and the National Council for Special Interest Groups, or people with disabilities, they're all functioning as one secretariat. And again, is it about representation of actually meaningful representation? I think those are the conversations we have to take over time, because you see, as the introduction was making it, we have the Constitution provides for freedom of expression, but again, as you keep on seeing young people that are coming up to criticize, which should be really called for, because for any government to improve, we need to have voices that are shaping narrative, voices that are calling into check. But what is happening online, we are seeing the shrinking voices, what we call self-censorship. Young people are no longer participating in politics. Young people are no longer calling out the government. Young people are no longer holding leaders accountable because of fear in courts to be put in the basement, because of fear of being isolated. So there is a couple of things that the Constitution provides for that we shall discuss again and again. Participate in public affairs. But for me, the recent example are the elections we participated in. If you realize, currently I was talking to a couple of politicians that now, even if you're old or young, as long as you make it to parliament, you're representing the young people, because that is your biggest constituency. Recently, we were celebrating Women's Day, and we were sharing about how the average age of a Ugandan girl is 17 years old. Yeah, that means even if you're a 50-year-old, a 60-year-old representing young people, you're representing people in your constituency, that means you're representing young people. But again, how often do we hear young people's issues being fronted? When you look at the issues of the Youth Manifesto in terms of budgeting and all of that, it does not reflect what young people stand for in terms of education, in terms of everything else. So there is that gap. And then we've also been having conversations around the nature of the cabinet of the country. For a country that has majority or over 80% young people, there is a generational gap, because when you look at the average age of the cabinet of this country, they are 70-year-olds. So at the end of the day, you question the generational gap and how it feeds into representation of a very young population. And definitely when we're talking about young population, you may have you may think we are talking about you who are coming to School of Law or Makerere University. But boy, oh boy, the people we are talking about, you will be shocked. But the young people we are talking about are people who have dropped out of primary school. For the women, at 17, they're married off with 2 children. And sadly, the young population we are referring to in today's conversation should be one that has repeated the cycles of the generation that we take after. Most of them are still in the villages, low livelihoods and all of that. So I think the Constitution, moving forward, I don't know if I've spoken a lot. I was meant to introduce myself, but this is a topic I'm so passionate about, and I'm happy to engage. That's it for me.
Thank you so much, Ms. Julia. Okay, moving on forward, as she has given us a brief background of her introduction, it seems the topic is part of her. But without wasting any more time, she talks about generally, she talks about elections, she talks about barriers and reasons to have more youth, and also activism, and also she talks about generally how we use our social media. So I'd like to dive into the questions for today's panel, which will be, do you think, and this go to all the panelists, each panelist will be having 1 minute just to talk about, to give an answer to this question. Do you think the current structures have created a constitution, that are created by the Constitution sufficiently empower the youth leaders, or is there a reform that is needed? I would like to hand over to Ms. Ogwal to give us her opinion, and then we shall move on like that backwards.
Good afternoon, everyone. So as earlier introduced, my name is Sweetie Ongwal, and I'm a panelist as well. And yes, I'm really passionate about the youth and human rights. So Alicia's question is asking us, are the constitutional provisions?
Do you think the current structures created by the Constitution sufficiently empower the youth leaders, or is there a reform that is required or needed?
Okay. So to better understand this question, what are the constitutional provisions that allow youth to participate in the governance of the country? We have Article 29 that talks about freedom of expression. We have Article 38 that talks about civic participation. And we even have the right to vote under Article 59. So we know that the National Youth Council is also another act that was passed by the government as a way of involving the people. Are they really efficacious when it comes to allowing the youth to participate? I do not think, to a large extent, they are not. Why? As Julia mentioned, that on average, also in statistics, averagely, 70% of the country is governed by young people. Is composed of young people. However, the ways in which these avenues of the youth participating in governance are being spoken about is not favorable for the people to actually receive information. These are things you find maybe in the Gazette, these are things you find in the Constitution, but how many people are well versed with some of the documents that actually provide for these issues? Very few. We understand that political education is something that was scraped off the curriculum way before any of us in this room got to participate in education. So how are people supposed to know they're supposed to participate in governance? What reforms can the government do? I think the government needs to actively engage with the younger people. We see a lot of money going into advertisements or even into campaigns, publicizing so much information about everything else, but nothing is talking about the central role that we have to play, the avenues through which we actually get to know how we can participate, how we can criticize the legislations coming into place in the country, how we can better propose certain reforms in the plenaries of parliament. And I think if we are able to tap into this more, it will create a better difference. I also acknowledge the fact that as young people, we also have a crucial role to play when it comes to the governance of the country. I don't want this to just be something that we criticize. I want it to also be something that we understand that every single day, it's your role to know what's going on in your country. It's your role to know the values of your country, to know what your constitution says, because it's within the provisions that basically says that. But yeah, I think it's a two-way role, but the government can also do so much more to better support this participation.
Okay, Miss Harmon, is there anything you would like to add on to that?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Herman Asmer, as Elia said. I think Miss Julia and Miss Sweetie said it all, but I think I'll try to bring it from the perception of a student that's going to school. So I think it now goes back to the whole idea that the youth or even these young people need to now acknowledge that they have the ability to bring change, because reforms can be done, but if the youth do not take can I say, the confidence or that first step to actually go out there and say that, oh, I can bring change, I can actually occupy these spaces and bring an impact into society, then even when reforms are put into place, I think then that cannot work. I think already structures exist, but in my opinion, I feel like they need a bit of molding and empowering of the youth. Yes, the youth are being empowered, but at the end of it all, the youth need to acknowledge that these spaces are meant for them and they should occupy them, and regardless of whether they have the big positions or wherever they are, they can still bring change, because at the end of the day, the youth are going to be the future leaders that are going to lead our country and different places. So yes.
I'll hand over to you, Ms. Julia.
Like said, the structures exist. The National Youth Council has over 600,000 youth leaders across the country from district to village level, but they're not empowered. For me, I actually look at it in terms of tokenism. We have put something in place, have the positions, but do you actually do anything meaningful? No, to a point that oftentimes government is doing programs in districts that have youth leaders, and they're doing programs for youth leaders, and they never engage the district youth leaders. And when you look into budgeting, the National Youth Council receives less than $1 billion. Their money was cut to about 800 million. National Youth Council was structured over 600,000 youth leaders. And when it comes to Women's Council, it has billions of money allocated to it. That's just the Youth Council. When you look at the Parliament, of course, we've talked about 5 youth members of Parliament are provided for by the Constitution. But even if these 5 youth members of Parliament agreed to front what is for the youth, you know, for Parliament, you need majority. So they do not make majority. They do not even make a threshold of any meaningful voice that would have anything meaningful pass. But again, beyond that, you also see that there's been clear intention by the state to kind of influence anything for the young people. I don't know how many of you know the existence of the National Youth Council. The Act provides that youth should be between 18 and 30, but you'll be shocked. I have campaigned in the same structure because that's the same structure that votes youth MPs. Majority of them are beyond 30. They repetitively take on offices, and for me, beyond even that, even the selection of the youth leaders, there's been clear intention by the state to involve themselves in those elections. They kind of influence who gets that position to kind of have patronage in case they win. That means beyond that, we can do the highlighting of problems here and there in the existing structures. But, well, like we mentioned, the Constitution can provide for all of these things, but there must be deliberate intention for us young people to organize ourselves. The Constitution will say it provides for freedom of expression. But you know, if you go on your phone, for example, I like what the Kenyans did, if you read about the Gen Z protests, what they did around the finance bill, there is so much knowledge you have as law students, that technically does not make sense to any average. You know, when you go on TikTok, the young Ugandans that actually have the biggest following, even those that are not educated or dropped out. So how do you use your technical knowledge to break it down? If, for example, there's something that we want to push as a narrative as young people, how do we organize ourselves online? We definitely need you to break it down in the simplest of ways, and that is what the Kenyan young generation did. They broke down the finance bill in very many languages in the simplest of terms, so that ability for us to organize and know. I know a couple of you will think, oh, politics is none of your business, or whatever is going on in this country is none of your business. It is not your business until you are affected, yeah? So at a certain point, we must be in position to organize, not per se to overthrow the government, but to actually drive the change we want. Because if meaningfully in the spaces we don't have position, yeah? If in the spaces we don't have the power, then our power is the demographic. Beyond the demographic, it's our ability to organize on either social media, use the knowledge you have, go online, break down policies or whatever it is that you can use to contribute, start up that, I don't know, organization or something, bring young people on board and meaningfully contribute to the country.
Yeah. Thank you very much. You know, she said, I don't do politics. Some of you say that, well, politics is doing us. But anyway, given that the panelists have actually given us a direct and have even given us practical ways on how to use social media, how to participate maybe in elections or in politics, and generally to use our voices, I just want to know that I want us to acknowledge the fact that there are youths that have actually used these platforms. We've heard of the likes of Janice Nkanja. We've heard we've seen also Miss Muhumuza Julia herself, and also very many other youths, even here in law school, where in our classes we have people that are very active and they speak about it. But then I just have one more question. Have these reforms by the Ugandan, like the reforms that they exist, and some of these youth that have participated. Miss Julia, this question is directed specifically to you. I want you to tell us just generally how you feel like your participation has affected, how these reforms generally have affected you in both positive and negative ways. It could be political or it could even be in your personal life. Like, generally, how has it affected you?
Interesting. I don't know how many reforms by the government for youth we have to talk about today. But again, one, I will start by saying there is little information around what the government is doing for the young people, including the specific programs it has put up. Oftentimes, if I just asked how many young people in this place know what even the government is doing for them, they will not know. Politically, it's what we have been talking about. The affirmative action for the young people, the spaces gazetted for the young people, the not financially empowered, but also even when they exist, very few people that are passionate to drive anything know about them. I remember when youth MPs were being declared, the whole country kept asking, but who votes these people? That's the kind of problem we are talking about. There are some nice programs done by the government for the young people, but they do not know about them. I think moving forward, one, we need to interest ourselves in knowing what the government is doing for us, because I don't know if it's deliberate effort for people in government not to make it known, But yeah, we need to interest ourselves in what the government is doing for young people. In that case, we can interrogate. I'll speak clearly to some of the programs that exist. The government has put up a couple of skilling programs. Those are reforms for young people, to skill young people, especially those that have not had access to skilling, but they also remain less empowered. Because when you go to districts, some of them take one person every 6 months. So for the country that has majority, recently I was looking at the statistics, 51% of young people remain out of employment, education, out of training, and any form of skilling. So there's usually a gap, but also you realize that the government's approach to addressing the issues of the youth, the very many things they do not tap in, the very many things that they would take advantage of, but they're not taking advantage of. Because of that gap, the leadership has to be in position to relate with the issues of the young people. And beyond just relating with the young people, we also, because we keep saying, oh, we want young people to represent us, but even those that represent must do it meaningfully. If we had 5 youth members of parliament that were vocal, that were actually serving the interests of the young people, they would do a very good job, to set a platform for those that come after us. But even those that represent young people at the National Youth Council Executive, I doubt any of you even know their names. That's how bad it gets. But these are the people representing you. I doubt some of you even know who your MPs are. So if you cannot know who your leaders are, then it is very hard. That is why I said the government is trying. Okay, as I conclude, I don't know if it's trying enough, but even when it tries and does something to reform for young people, oftentimes there is that mismatch, because I don't think the leadership of the young people understands. For example, the state minister for youth, oftentimes if you're active on Twitter, you get to wonder why this position does not fall into the hands of someone who could use it for the advantage of the youth. We see what the Minister of Youth in just here, Rwanda, is doing for the youth, lobbying so much for the youth. So oftentimes it even goes beyond the numbers, the existing structures, but how meaningfully they are empowered or how meaningfully they are used to push the agenda of the youth. I don't know if I've answered your question.
Okay, thank you so much. Following that, Ms. Sweetie Ogwal, I would like to ask you a question that you. Are the provisions within the Constitution efficacious when it comes to youth participation? Do you think those provisions, you talked about them earlier, but do you think, in your opinion, do you think that they are actually efficacious? And if they are not, what are some of those examples that you may think you may share with the audience to make them more aware?
Okay, so I listed definitely a number of provisions in the Constitution that deal with participation and that deal with youth participation. I think that most of them are not as efficacious as we would expect them to be. Especially when it comes to civic rights, when it talks about the right to participate in the affairs of government. The government can ingrain something in the Constitution and it says that you have the right to participate. But when even you look at the dynamics in which the national youth elections happen, the question is, are you economically able to participate in that? And if you're being secluded on grounds of your finances, that is not a right that you can actually exercise. So, for some provisions that come to civic participation, I don't think it's okay. Even when you look at freedom of expression, the right to protest, Article 29 that deals with to gather. I'll give an example. This was in last 2024 when we had a campaign against, there was supposed to be a street protest led by those of Alokin Praise. They went to the police to actually inform them about the riot. But you see, these are people who are averagely 20 years old, below 25 years old. They do not have guns, they do not have pangas, and they are told that you cannot come and stand and just hold banners saying that we do not support this. And you're imprisoned. You look at the manner in which these people are handled when they're just trying to express themselves. It shows you that there's a sense of fear that's being perpetrated in the system, that any person who speaks up can't actually speak up, or they're going to face, jail. And sometimes we may look at these as just isolated events that, they are making too much noise or something like that, but it's actually the government sending a signal to everyone that if you try to speak up on these things, something is going to happen to you. But there are some provisions that are efficacious. I just want to ask us a question. How many of us voted? I voted. Who else voted? That's less than half the room. But you have a right to vote, and we do not exercise the right. You get? So whereas some of these provisions are not efficacious, the fact that we're not also tapping into the avenues we have is a limitation in itself. I like what Julia said about Kenya being able to tap into the social media avenues and being able to sensitize their own people about their own provisions. I think it's our role as law students. Now this is where I'm coming into some of the solutions we can make. It's our role as law students to actually contribute towards informing people about the rights that exist, about the ways we can participate in governance, and about even these very same provisions. And I know some people want to just do law for commercial sense, commercial purposes and whatnot, but human rights, democracy matters to everyone. And I think the best example is, like, for example, medical school. These are people who are isolated from the governance space because they are constantly in sciences. But right now you're seeing that the government is saying that they now have to fund their internship an extra year. Politics may have been something that they were unwilling to participate in, but now you're seeing that these reforms are now coming to bite them back. And that's the same for all of us. You may want to do commercial, but you have to spend a portion of your time to actually talk about these things, to educate the people about them, and to actively engage, because I think the government can actually pay attention to us as long as we're able to effectively come together and talk about these things, not isolated individuals. Because even when we called for the protest, when Praise called for the protest, the turn-up was really low. People just kept on tweeting about it, posting it, but on ground, like in Garden City where the convergence happened, the numbers were so few. So I think, whereas some of the provisions are not efficacious, I think to an extent sometimes we fail ourselves by not being as smart about tapping into the available avenues that we have.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ogwal. And maybe just to add on to what you've said, I think, especially on the right to vote, there's a lot of people don't even want to maybe exercise these rights. They don't even want to show face. And it's like people, especially the youth, we are accepting death even before we are killed or something like that. And I think that just really sparked something, because when I went to the polling station, my polling station was in Nakasero, and if you realize the population is literally like the youngest person at the polling station, and then we want to complain, and we don't feel satisfied about maybe what's taking place. And then again also to talk about the issue of the medical students. And another thing is that we want to ignore things before they reach us. Like we are so self-centered, like unless something really affects us directly, we don't want to actually participate. But I think my idea around it is that there is always an indirect effect. Even if it's not affecting you directly, there are people who make lives possible, who make our lives possible, and they are also human beings. And like, if we don't be able to advocate for what we think is right and what is going to help us to improve, I don't think we are going to be able to thrive. And like, you cannot, how much more would you have to hate your country? And even if you hate your country, it will not take away the fact that you're still Ugandan. So it's a matter of fact of just doing what you're supposed to do at the right time, in the right place, and for the right purpose. Thank you so much, Ms. Ogwal. Going forward, this question is to be directed to Ms. Harmon. Given that you've written a book, you're a student, and we understand that, and your exposure as compared to what the law students are in law school is not as much. We shall put that into considerations. But then, okay, as a student, how do you think you can balance, what do you think you can do to balance civic participation with pursuits such as academics, entrepreneurship, because you have a book out, and I'm assuming it is going to be part of your career, and at the moment, and you would be selling it off, which is part of entrepreneurship, and you're a student, you're in your Form 6, and you're in your final year of high school. So how do you think the students and also the youth can actually be able to balance this? And yeah, that light. Thank you.
Well, that's an interesting question. The journey is really not easy because you have to balance studies and as well as writing. And for those that write, I'm sure a doctor is one of them. He usually writes in the Observer, or anyone else that writes. You need to go, through the work and notice if there are challenges or spelling errors and all that. And that really takes a lot of time. So I think the whole idea is how then do you balance both of them, because you wouldn't want to give one more weight and ignore the other. You wouldn't want to give the book more time and lose out on your studies, because eventually studies is as well important. So I think generally, even back to the youth or even to the law students, because I think for the few days that I was here with Doctor and a bit of Sweetie, Alicia, during the fellowship, I got to realize that law school is actually something that requires dedication and discipline. Same goes for other courses out there, I believe. But I think the youth, the first thing that they need to do is have self-discipline. Because self-discipline is what is going to enable you to have your programs laid out there. If you have this self-discipline that from this time to this time, I need to be doing this, that is what is going to make you be an exceptional youth out there, because you're now grounding yourself to that activity and you're not going to move out of it. Problem we face as youth now is that social media is a challenge that we all have. You'll go on your phone, you're scrolling through TikTok, before you know it, it's 2 hours, 3 hours, and your time is wasted. But if you have self-discipline, you could use that 1 hour that you're on TikTok to do more productive work. And then secondly is getting knowledge. You see, even the two panelists have been saying that, is that the youth currently here do not know their rights. For instance, not very many people know what the Constitution actually says. If you ask anyone what is your right according to the Constitution, they don't know it, but we have Constitution in schools, in bookstores, and different places. So I think the second way that you can balance different activities that you do as a youth is getting knowledge about different ideas. For example, if it's about leadership, just like Julia was saying, do we know how many people make up the National Youth Council? Do we know how many youth MPs we have out there? Did we follow through the elections? What went wrong? Or what can we improve on as the youth? So I think generally the youth as well need to get more information, and there is power in knowledge. That's what I believe. So whatever that you get to know more, you're able to speak about it, and you're able to bring change. You get to realize that there are very many people out there in the rural areas that do not get education. There are people that are suffering from poverty and all that. And as youth, we are going to be the future leaders. We are going to be the people that are going to bring change. So I think the second thing is getting knowledge. And then thirdly could be them being able to be consistent in whatsoever they do. You see, as youth, we feel like peer pressure is something that we need to follow. If you feel like, oh, my friend is probably now going for youth MP, I should be following that path, or I should also be doing that. That is not who you're destined to be. There's some people that are meant to be lawyers, there's some that are meant to be doctors, different fields, and everyone has a different area that they could bring impact. But because we are not consistent with what we do, we want to start up something today, and once it doesn't work out for us, we want to go into something else. So whatever you do as a youth, I feel that's a big challenge that we face, being consistent in what we do, not doing it out of peer pressure, or not doing it out of, oh, friends are doing this and all that. So I think the three things that I would definitely say is having self-discipline, having knowledge, because knowledge is power, and thirdly, being consistent in what we do. And that would enable us balance different things. It doesn't necessarily have to be studies and probably writing a book. For me, it was definitely studies and writing a book. But for some people, it would be studying and working, because not everyone is able to, have parents that pay tuition. Or for some people, it might be balancing different jobs. It might be doing different activities. And, at the end of the day, you don't want to burn out. You don't want to lose on any of them. So, yeah, for me, I think that's it.
Okay, in that line, I just want to know your perspective. What do you think about women's representation?
Well, first of all, since it's a Women's Month, happy Women's Month to all the ladies out here. So, yes, true. Society has evolved over time, and we had this narrative that, oh, women can't occupy different spaces. Oh, a lady can't do this job, or a woman can't do this. But I think where we are heading right now, we are seeing women being empowered, starting from the girl child. I think now different initiatives and education schemes have been put up to empower women. How do we then empower women? Through educating them, because once you educate them, there is this common proverb that educating a woman is more like educating a nation. I don't know if I've got it right, but yes, women are people that play a big role within society. Obviously not sidelining the men, but yes, women are the ones that are going to be with the kids. They're the ones that are going to nurture these young people into being people that would impact society. So I think over the time, now we can see there are different women that are running for different positions. For instance, when I walked in, I saw banners of ladies that are going for different positions here in Makerere. So that proves that ladies are now being empowered and they're trying to find who they are, standing up for different things that they believe in. If they're trying to fight different challenges, they're using their voices to bring impact. So I think now, I don't know definitely the exact percentage, but I think it's improving. Even in schools, we see a girl child being educated. We see teachers that are actually females. We see very many women that are taking different spaces, women that are doctors, engineers, and different positions. So I think women are being educated. However, I feel like the narrative still exists that women can't do certain things. So I think it all goes back to now, how are we going to push out the narrative that women cannot do certain things? So I think it's all about being biased and societal norms that limit women from doing certain things. But I mean, we have seen women that have broken those norms and they have gone out there. So I think as the youth now, we can use role models and pick inspiration from them. Yes, we can't be like them, but we can pick a leaf from them and try to bring change within our society and make sure that there is a future that we can all be proud of and say, yes, women. For example, praise doing some change there. We see women being educated. We see women that are taking up spaces. So I think generally, we need to keep empowering women to take up those spaces as well.
Okay. Do you think that is, you've talked about generally what you've observed, do you think that's directly translating into real influence, like generally?
Well, we cannot really say it's 100% effective, but at least we are seeing some hope. We are seeing some future. For instance, I was recently seeing Dr. V. I don't know if you have seen her. She's from Zimbabwe, and at 27 years, yes, she has a PhD. So you can see that she was able to break those norms. So I think it all goes back that women are using social media. They're using different platforms to bring change. So I think, yes, there is some percentage that hasn't really been solved or like brought change, but even the few that we have seen, I think that's some good hope that we cannot really ignore and say that, oh, women are not being empowered. So yes, there is some hope and future.
Okay, that's very nice. Thank you for the contribution. Ms. Julia, I just want to ask you, what do you think of the relationship between the youth and the government? Could you briefly highlight on that?
I would say it's a toxic relationship. I don't know if, if that's the best word to use, because there is clearly a very big gap between the government and the young people, even when the young people are the biggest percentage. I think even attempts during the campaigns where you saw Jazz with Jaja, the Gen Z, in the recent attempts during the campaign where we saw Gen Z's, I think, Jazz with, you also realize that the people who met with the president are not really a clear representation of the Gen Z's. So for me, that only paints a picture that either we do not understand the composition of the current young people. I'm Gen Z, but there's millennials, there's all sorts of the young people. But when I say toxic is, I have had a chance to run a national campaign. I have moved across 146 districts. I have seen the lives of the young people, and that is why I said in the beginning, it's sad to conclude that the biggest percentage of the young people are not us who are educated. Yeah, it is those that are still in villages repeating the same cycles, like most of the backgrounds we come from. So when I say toxic, it doesn't mean that's the end. That is why I say there is still more effort for us young people to actively participate in government processes, shaping narrative if we are not invited to the table. When you go across the world, what young people are doing is incredibly insane, like positive insane. Young people are building solutions across all sorts of problems. They're thinking for the future. Yeah, oftentimes they're not negotiating with the government to be on table. They're actually building their spaces to contribute to the government. So I agree with what she said. We need to move away from fighting to be included, especially with the government that is far apart with the young people, but rather use our education, our knowledge, our skills, our exposure to build spaces that can contribute in our societies.
Okay, thank you so much. Ms. Ogwal, and you talk about generally the role, you talked about elections and generally that. I also would like to pick your mind on what you think about the relationship on the youth, between the youth and the government.
On my part, I think there's such a vacuum. It's like these are people who can't. I don't think I've ever seen maybe our government sitting with our people like in a proper manner. Because even when you listen to the situations where they call the youth to go in and speak to the government, it's really those who have connections to the inside, you know. And then the president will sit there. We'll sit there and listen to them, and then they ask for money, and they are presenting problems that, I don't think they are presenting problems, they are presenting personal issues. Okay, it's a very big vacuum, and the way you can see the vacuum is even in the laws passed. You're looking at a parliament, maybe it has 546 MPs. Why aren't we talking enough about education? Did you know, okay, I think I'm in the cohort of 2008, people who entered P7. No, that was in my cohort. But then over 90% of learners failed to complete their education annually. That was per a newspaper report, yeah? And there's a certain cohort where I think it was just roughly 2 in 10 learners who were able to complete primary education. Why aren't these things we are talking about? Why aren't we talking about the high prices of education? Why should a child have to pay over 3 million to access education? And then you're seeing that they use that same criteria, because you see, when you privatize schools, you're basically saying it's only those who can afford that have the best shot at getting a government scholarship into the best university in the country. And those odds being put against people who can't afford it, you're excluding a significant portion of the population from acquiring basic education. Why aren't these things being tabled in parliament? We're seeing MPs are getting over 300 million to purchase a car. You're seeing, I think it was going on around Twitter, how a certain portion of influencers, billions were lavished on them for a certain event. Healthcare systems are broken down. Recently we did a campaign and we went to see some cancer patients, women, and there's this boy, he's 13 years old, and he had to drop out of school to take care of his grandmother. Because, you know, the Cancer Institute does not offer that as a, it's not provided, basically. Yet, money is being dished out in the craziest things and no one is saying anything about it. The types of laws, you know, we do law, yeah? And I'm seeing over 14 volumes of laws on so many things, but the things that actually affect our people are not being regulated effectively. Why doesn't the government have ears on ground to actually listen to these things? When people come out to say they do not want to have a dialogue, I think it's only when it's something economical that they'll sit down and say, okay, let me hear you. When the Kasita people closed their shops, they decided to actually hear them that we cannot put in place such a harsh taxation system. Why don't we talk about education? Why don't we talk about how mental health is becoming such a crisis in our country? People are dropping out of school rapidly. Children are going into drugs. You're looking at how phones are being abused. It's impacting the health of people mentally. These are things you're not seeing in our policies. The hierarchy of, budget allocation is... So I think it's such a big vacuum, and one of the ways that the government has really made it such a cancer is through the education system. I think scrapping political education has to be one of the biggest mistakes our country ever made. I told someone that up until I came to law school, I have never felt more Ugandan in my life, because I learned so much about my country in a short time, and I didn't know all of this was happening. I think it transformed how I saw. I used to want to just, build a life for myself, but I realized that it's our role to contribute towards the betterment of our country. But how are we supposed to know that if we don't educate ourselves about these things. The government is failing in that area. It's failing to consolidate and mentor a group of people who are going to take over leadership, because these people are not growing younger, they are growing old. Who is going to come in after them if the younger people are not being mentored? And you're seeing the president pushing for policy that everyone should go into STEM. Who is going to talk about policy reforms? Who is going to talk about social reforms, you know? So I think that's why they're failing there. The government is failing us, yeah? But also, again, back to us, I think this should be a call for each one of us to actually reflect and think about how we see politics, how we see civil society. There's something the country director of CAS told us, how in Germany it's looked at as, how civil society is looked at as something that people contribute to financially. It's something that, it's like a church, sort of. You don't go there because you expect to be paid. You don't go there because you expect to get tokens of appreciation. It's something you go into because you have to contribute and create a better space for the people coming ahead of you. This is for everyone. It's not, you know, a money thrifting thing. Even I hate the joke of, I'm going into parliament to steal, I'm going into parliament because I need a stable job. It's not funny, because until you face the impacts of that, you start to realize that when you go there, it's not about the money you get. It's, I'm so sorry, it's hurtful, because these people get allowances on clothing, cars, and you can't even attend the sessions and pass a good law, you know? But someone out there is driving a taxi, and on that same money, they're supposed to pay for their family, they're supposed to pay taxes. Okay, it's that vacuum, but I think it also calls for all of us to really redefine how we see civil society, how we see democratic participation. Yeah.
Okay. And also, just to throw more light at, just being establishing the fact that maybe the relationship between the youth and the government is not really as healthy as we expect it to be. And this goes back, I think, to accountability, and maybe if you like, and also generally what the youth can do. And you know, with Dr. Kavumba in the fellowship, we keep on talking about ideally doing what we can with what we have. And like, you do not, and even that time when the country director came and she was telling us, you don't have to really have so much money, and you know, you don't have to be coming on a certain political card, and you don't have to be coming, like, you know, it's just the little that you can do. Is it? And that's why, like, so much, if you can view my sisters, you see, at that time, during that time before they shut down the internet, I used to encourage people to go and vote. It's just the little, it's the bare minimum that you can do, and like playing like the role that you're supposed to be playing. And people think that the change, and also another thing I think which I should actually share with the audience is about not expecting instant change, especially looking at our history. We've never had a successful election. I would like to perceive as that, because the rest have been coups, except the recent elections, which were elections, as earlier stated. But if we did the little that we had to do, and maybe showed up when we had to show up as the youth, and not really fight amongst each other, and also not to look at politics as a source of income, and also looking at people making jokes, you know. In our year when we had an opportunity to go and visit the parliament, and you know, people are making all these memes, the next generation of thieves is going to parliament. But then when you realize, it was a joke, but I think there is so much, sometimes I like to think of it as we need therapy as a country, and I know so much the elder generation does not really think about therapy as that, but I like to term it as political therapy, to be able to realize maybe what we need to do, and yes, attending such conversations and being able to contribute. And it's not that us who are this side of the panel or of the table that we are actually better than you. It's just about sharing our ideas. And next time when you're also given such an opportunity, what can you do? What do you use your social media to do? So in like church, not to be too religious, but I'll just give you an example that I can relate with, is like church. They usually encourage us to like use our statuses to post like verses and help like to transmit the gospel. But then what are you doing? Are you just waking up and like saying another day to fight, another on your status, or you're actually encouraging people and make them aware that, you know what, there is this right and this is taking place and maybe this is not right. You don't have, maybe sometimes you really don't have to, you may not be the kind that really walks onto to the street to protest. And I have so much respect for people who do that. But then what are you doing? Essentially what I'm trying to say is that what are you doing generally? So in that line, I'd like to tune to Miss Harmon. Generally, in your book, I encourage you to buy her book after this session. It's like a self-help book, but it's self-discovery, and especially, it speaks a lot in context. And I would like to take her to, like, in her chapter 2, she talks about unlocking the rooms inside that you have not yet entered. And sometimes she talks about generally how to relate with the environment. And I think our environment also includes the government, right? How do you think that has been, like your family, and how do you think like that has been there, like in the government, that has really helped you transition, given that like you came into the country like when you were really young, and like how has that really helped you like transition the country, and also to come up and be able to write a book and participate in it, to go to school and even be able to participate in debate, and also when there is a national secondary schools moot, and then you be able to participate and emerge as the best oralist. How do you think that has impacted you, and like how do you think our environments like generally impact, like they encourage us, and also what do you think that can be, like what do you think you can use that power to do generally?
Well, chapter 2 of the book talks about unlocking the rooms that you haven't entered to. And can I say the aim behind it, when you read the chapter, it's basically about potential and realizing who you are. So my aim when I was writing this chapter was, there are very many people out there that really do not know who they are. Yes, they know, for example, their name is Hermon, or they know where they come from, but they don't know the power that they have within them. They don't know the change that they can bring within society. So drawing it back to me, I moved here from my home country, Eritrea, when I was about like 7 years. So, you know, moving into a country that you really do not know, new people, new society, different education system, different everything, and you know, being a child as well, you really need to adapt to this type of environment. It wasn't really very easy, but yes, I really coped up with the environment with time. I made friends and I started to grow within that type of environment. But I think actively my passion for debate or like public speaking started off from high school. So I joined Senior 1, I think about 2020. And we had like a normal conversation with one of my classmates, you know, about the different things that were happening by them, you know. COVID had come, different things were happening, new curriculum had just hit, and everyone was having different opinions about it, whether government needs to adopt it or, you know, drop it and all that. You know, we were all puzzled about the whole things that were taking place. So out of that conversation, I realized, okay, maybe I can use my voice to actually bring change within society. So when a debate competition came up, I was like, oh, let me probably sign it up. And when I signed it up, I gave it my all. Like, I gave it my all, I trained and used my voice. So I think from then after, I got to realize that when you speak about things that you know, when you speak about things that you've got to realize within society, you're able to bring change. And that was debate for me and public speaking. The more that you're given motions to debate about, the more that you're given topics to go into and look through them, you get to get this knowledge. And trust me, this knowledge doesn't live at any one time. You might go into the room thinking, oh, I'm doing a competition and I must win, but you get to keep it as time moves on. So that's how it then continued. And I then adapted to robotics as well. I got to realize that currently we're having different climate crises that is happening. I don't know if there are climate activists around, yeah, but there is environmental degradation that's happening, climate crisis and all that. And technology is evolving with time. And I got to realize that, oh, hey, like we can use robotics, we can use coding and programming to bring impact. So when I first put my hands on to get a project, and it was actually very good. We got the opportunity to present it to the Minister of ICT by then. I think that was Mr. Chris, if I'm not mistaken. So yes, and he really loved it. So that's when I got to realize that when you put your mind to something, regardless of what society says, because yeah, very many people were like, oh, so now it's from debate to now robotics. But yeah, I felt like, okay, let me give it a try. And that's when I got to realize that, oh, we can bring change. And that's when I was able to present the robot with the team in Singapore and Switzerland as well. And it really did well. And drawing it back to the moots competition, to the law students, and I was telling Doctor as well, I think I loved the moots competitions because you get to realize what the Constitution says. You get to realize the different challenges that society is facing. When they gave us the case, we had to train within a period of 5 days to 1 week. And we realized that there are very many people out there that do not have someone that can speak for them. So I think the lawyers that are taking law now should use their voices in the future. I don't think it's just about money and, you know, the commercial purpose of it, but it should be about bringing change. Yes, you can say, oh, the reforms within our country are not the best, or the structures are not the best to work in. But I think if you have the mindset of, I need to bring change within my society, you can bring hope for that individual that is within that case when you're their lawyer and you're trying to help out. So I think to me back, I got to realize that my environment was something that was shaping me to be better. Because, well, I believe if I didn't go to that school, I wouldn't really have been in spaces of debate or robotics or anything else, or even participated within the moots competitions. So I think the youth out there should be very careful of the environment that they are in, because, you know, bad company corrupts good morals. So the type of friends that you have, the type of society that you have, determines who you become in future. Well, if you're with someone that is, you know, unproductive during the course of the day, you're not going to become productive as well. But if you dine with people that are sharing knowledge about different things that society is facing or different challenges, then you get to realize that, oh, I can actually bring change. So I think chapter 2 to me spoke in a way that our environment, our society, our culture, or like background shapes who we are in the future to be a better version. You can't say, I come from a poor family, I can't occupy spaces. We have seen people that come from very poor families taking up big spaces and they're doing impact. We have seen people who never went to school actually, you know, being one of the top students in their universities and all that. So I think it all goes back again to the mindset and you being able to fit in that environment.
Yes, like how Nelson Mandela says, education is one of the biggest tools of transformation. And on our panel today, we've talked a lot about education. And in that regard, what really inspired you to write this book? And what's the one take home that you really want the people who are in the audience right now to take on and be able to apply in their lives as young adults? And also, like, what do you really want to share? What do you feel like you really want to share? And also, along that line, you could share with us some of the barriers that you had to overcome and be able to publish the book.
Yeah. Okay. So the book is called The Crown You Carry. So why I chose that topic, or that the title of The Crown You Carry, is most times society defines who we are. Society tells us you can't be this, you can only be this, you can't do this. But all of us, even within this room, have a crown that is special that we carry, especially as the youth. It could be that you could be the next prime minister, you could be the next president, but it all starts with you discovering who you are. So I think I will briefly go through the chapters. There are 10 chapters, and the first chapter talks about the moment you meet the real you. And most of us, especially the youth, we grow up not knowing who is the real you. Who are you besides the one that you post on social media, or besides your name, and besides what society defines you. So it's about self-discovery. And then 2, it's about unlocking the rooms inside you that you haven't entered. It basically talks about potential, discovering your potential. How do you use it to benefit society? Chapter 3 is about unwrapping the gift. It talks about talent. All of us have talents, but not everyone uses their talent to their best ability. Some of our talents could be speaking. For some people, it could be, dancing or music to bring change within society. But not everyone discovers their talent. Chapter 3 talks about pain beyond the screen. I think this is one of the chapters that I took my time to write it, because it's about social media. What takes place when we are on our phones, when we are on our TikToks, Instagram, WhatsApp, and all that. We think because we have seen one Instagram post that someone has posted wearing, their best clothes, you think that's their lifestyle. But it took them, 100 pictures to just post that one picture. Yet that's not their actual life out there. So we need to know what's the life behind social media and behind the screen. Chapter 6 talks about getting peace in storms. We live in a world where there are different difficulties, failures, and all that. But how do you get peace amidst that? It could be that you've failed now, but do you stand up from where you've failed? It could be in different areas of your life that you've tried and things didn't work out, because trust me, not everything is going to work out in the best way that we anticipate. But are you going to rise up from that, or are you going to remain there? Chapter 7 talks about rising from the ashes. That's basically about true success and what failure looks like, and how can you use failure as a weapon to rise up again, instead of, remaining there and thinking, oh, I am a loss, or I'm a failure, I can't really, shine again, that's the end of my story. That's actually the beginning of your story once you failed, because you have now the opportunity to learn from it. Then the next chapter is leaving marks that can't be erased. This is about legacy and impact. In most times, when people die, their names are erased. For instance, if today we say, oh, who was Hermon? What would people actually remember me for? Would my legacy and impact be left, or that would be the end of it all? So this is about how to leave a legacy that someone would say, oh, I know this person, oh, I know doctor, oh, I know this, and they can actually remember you even when you're gone, and they can mention your name in spaces that you're not in. Then chapter 8 is about the voice of the voiceless. This is about leadership, what true leadership looks like in this generation, not basically comprised of, selfish interests or about corruption or anything, but being a generational leader, a leader that is going to impact the future generations to come. And chapter 9 is about hearts that heart and hearts that love. This is about true friendships and relationships. What type of community do we dine with? What type of people do we spend our time with? Do we become productive when we talk to them? Or do we spend most of our time doing unproductive things with friends we think are benefiting us, yet in actual sense, they are draining a lot from us because we are not gaining anything from them? And the last chapter is about the divine calling. Well, I am a Christian, and I believe that for us to thrive through in our lives, we need God. What does God call you to be? Who does God say you are? The Bible says that when He formed, before even we were born, He knew us. So who does He say Hermon is? Who does He say Julia is? Who does He say Sweetie is? So it's about discovering who you are. Then back to the story why I wrote a book. I got to realize that most times in life, it's not about what you achieved as an individual. For instance, all of us here on this panel have achieved something, one or two things that we can say, oh, this person is this and this. I remember when Alicia was reading who these panelists are, she kept on mentioning this, did this, they achieved this and this and this. But that's who they are, like that's their name. But what legacy have they left? So I felt it shouldn't only be about what did Hermon do, what has she achieved, but it should be how should someone out there who hasn't discovered who they are be able to discover who they are, and as well as have that legacy that they can leave behind. So that was the whole idea as to why I now decided to write a book besides debates and everything else that I had done. Then to the barriers that I faced, I think the first barrier was balancing school and writing a book. Trust me, it's very hectic and it needs a lot of sacrifice and discipline. So that was the first challenge. And then the second challenge was getting a publishing house. Well, you see, there is a difference between being a published author and just an author. An author, you could go to probably NASA Road, print out the things and post it out there, be like, oh, I have a book and all that. But a published author is when a publishing house has gone through your content and realized that this is something that society can benefit from it. So that was the second challenge, but I got to get a publishing house. It's called Desha Publishing House, and they really went through the manuscript, read through it, and eventually it came into reality. And thirdly, I think the whole idea of now putting everything together to have the book, because getting the different chapters, you write one chapter today, the other chapter another day, and all that. Now you have to get it into one book, something that someone can read and be like, oh, okay, the money that I've invested to buy this book is something that is worth it. So yeah, I think those were the challenges, but eventually I overcame them and the book is out here, so yes, it was worth it.
Okay, that brings us to the end of our panel discussion. However, and this leads us to the opening of the plenary session, where we shall be receiving questions and maybe feedback from the audience. And there shall be a microphone. We shall take only 5 questions. 5 questions strictly. So let me see, there is 1, 2, 3, only 3 questions? 4, 5, okay. Maurice, the lady in pink, and then there is Mr. Lutu there, then Israel and Peter, okay.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Mwesigwa Jesse Lutu. So my question goes to the panel. Madam Ogwal, as a law student, but also a legal practitioner, to Hammond, to Miss Hammond, she's a writer now. Julia, my elder sister Julia. She's also a political aspirant in that field. So I want to first give it a background of Article 20 of the Constitution, whereby it states that fundamental human rights of the individual, they are inherent and not granted by the state, meaning that these rights are for an individual, that however small, however much that the people seeking this right are few in number, it matters. Then I'll take you to Article 45, which says that those that are not, the rights not listed in this Constitution are also recognized, though they are not explicitly written. And from Article 20, the rights are not granted by the state, but rather they are bestowed upon you, upon being human. So we are here discussing youth voices, we are discussing the Constitution, and we are discussing the Constitution and rights. My question is about the sex minorities, the sexual minorities, and those are particularly the homosexuals. That in Uganda's laws, they are not provided for, they are discriminated against, and they have a right because they are humans, and we have said that these rights are bestowed upon them by virtue of them being human. So, Julia, in your political journey, do you envisage yourself, or in your manifestos and strategies of governance, do you see yourself fighting for these people, for the rights of these people as well? Likewise, Sweetie, as a legal practitioner, do you see yourself of help to this category of people? Then Hammond, as a writer, are you doing any literature? Are you planning to do any literature that favors these kind of people? Because if I am gay now, I cannot come out in public to mention
have 30 seconds.
Such. Mm-hmm. But I have a right, and that is what I am. Mm-hmm. So that is my question.
Okay. We shall pass the microphone to Mr. Israel. Yeah. My microphone is not working. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kato Israel Babikwa. I'm a year 1 student here, and very proudly a student of constitutional law under Dr. Kawumba Msinje. Yes. So, In one of Dr. Businje's articles, he wrote and called this constitution, the Constitution of Uganda, a book of lies. But now, this book of lies, we have to protect this book of lies nevertheless, because it's our constitution. Now, to a layman, okay, even before you read the article and understand where he comes from, to call the Constitution a book of lies, if you just read the title, you're biased about it. You're like, now since this is a celebrated professor of constitutional law, he knows what he's saying, and yes, we should not respect that book.
Could we go to the question directly? Yeah.
Yes. So, with academics like Dr. Businje, no offense meant, sir. With academics like Dr. Businje and other elders in the society stepping away from the mainstream environment where they can, continue to advocate for constitutional, for things like upholding the constitution and everything, with them showing that they're stepping away and keeping quiet. Where should we derive our motivation from as young people to continue upholding the book of lies and what it provides for? Thank you so much.
Okay. To the microphone, you can send it to, kindly pass the microphone up to the lady in pink, then to Maurice, then to Peter, so that it comes back.
Thank you. 2 questions, and I'll go straight to the point. One, I want to address the question of fear that was brought up as you people were discussing, and more exactly the individuality of the youth when they are participating in civic spaces and things like this. When you talked about the composition, the 70%, did you quite look into the fact that most of these are actually then people that are illiterate and so on, or people that are burdened with family issues and challenges, and therefore cannot even quite ably address themselves to what is happening? And also, you talked about the use of technical knowledge, that how then can we use the technical knowledge that we have? But you also look at the fact that it is quite, it is circumcised to a particular point, that we do not get to address ourselves very much to so many solutions. Because quite ironic is that we are having this for once or the second time, a human rights discussion in this class. Food for thought. Why? Yet it is something that is so eminent and a very big disturbing problem. The second question is now the solution-based one. You mentioned about how you were told that we need to use what we have. So what we have is one, the emerging technologies and things like AI. How can we make suitable and compatible these things that we get the youth to engage in civic spaces and civic debates, in the sense that the largest composition, being your 70%, carries a gadget on their hands? Can this be a point or a space that we can rather engage in, rather than the opposite that was rallying on and taking on these movements? This can also be a very suitable and accommodative thing that we can use. Thank you.
Thank you all panelists for your submissions. It has been powerful, impacting young people. But as we are having these discussions, there's some points that you laid out. You told these young people to go and participate in the politics, to go and get involved in the youth structure politics, to represent their young people, to represent the fellow youth. But we are facing a challenge where structures that have been set aside to promote youth leadership are influenced by money. Young people like Maurice, who are still at university, cannot get into those spaces because of the greed for money in such positions. And we face another challenge where people there are after money. Most of the people come out when they are going to endorse a presidential candidate. Actually go to learn of the National Students' Council when it was going to endorse the president for the 2021 elections. So most of these young people in such positions are being driven to a position of personal benefit than representing the young people, than representing the fellow youth. And when you get to see these people representing the youth are literally not youths. These are people who are battling with NIRA for their age to be updated, to be accommodated, to be called young people. Yet they are adults representing young people, and they are not vocal. Early this year, I had a conversation with the Kenyan Gen Zs. There is a leadership summit I attended, and you would literally hear a lot of sense from these young people. They actually have knowledge about the things that are transpiring in their country compared to Uganda, compared to law school, where Maurice will come and make points in Dr. Ruhweza's lecture, and the fellow students will ask him, which drone do you want? Do you want a blue one, a red one? So we want to get to a point where, how can we get to a point where young people, where law students can be empowered to stand and be those great leaders that can empower fellow students without intimidation? Because it starts at the university, that we can no longer have open air campaigns in Makerere University where we cannot freely express ourselves as young people. I appreciate Dr. Kabumba for having taken this bold step to hear from the young people, but what more can we do to be heard? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I think that question will be merged together with Mr. Israel's question, because could you pass the microphone in front to Mr. Peter? But it will be merged with Israel's, because I believe it's covering the same area about what more people can do, and also what, given that some people are retiring, and also where the others can stand for. So, Mr. Peter, your question?
Thank you so much. I want to congratulate Amon for the wonderful book. Thank you so much for producing that. And I want to thank the panelists, my colleagues, young people and fresh bloods like mine. I thank you so much for being bold to share your ideas. And I want to thank Dr. Kabumba for organizing this event. Thank you so much, Doctor. In such a time when young people are being feared left and right, everyone fear young people coming together and discuss. And by the way, their strength lies in suffocating platforms that bring us together. In everywhere, wherever you go, where young people or where people have no platform to come together, just know people cannot stand together and people are being oppressed left and right. I just wanted to add on to what these people shared little. They have shared about Uganda, they have shared about the constitutions. I'm a law student, but I love to be more practical beyond the law. Because when you narrow this, the status quo down to where we are right now, I think that Maurice tried to share about it. Within the university system, we find that we have positions, but they are just mere positions. We have no authority. Everything is imposed on us. Everything is from top to bottom. Until young people rise up to demand for their positions, until young people rise up to demand for what is rightfully theirs, then no one will hear us. Because the history tells us that the history has always been the history of class struggle. There's no one, there's no doctor, or there's no lecturer who would wait to see you step on his toes and never shout at you and let you go. Meaning, at every class, there's always a class struggle. So my encouragement to young people that let us, wherever platform we find ourselves in, let us take over and dominate it. That's why I appreciated Amon, because she's using her pen to write her thoughts and share with the whole world. You on WhatsApp, you on X, you contesting in the guild elections, please show up, demand for your position, and demand it fully and ready for the battle. That is it. Otherwise, we shall keep speaking, we shall keep quoting the law, but no one will listen to us. It will be like that. No one will listen to us. Even when we voted Bobby Wine, things could not change. Nothing will change because it's always a class struggle. Thank you.
Okay, the questions from the plenary session, we shall hand over back to the panelists to answer a few questions, but in 2 minutes. Yes, Ms. Julia, you could.
Interesting. Do I see myself fighting for the rights of LGBTQI? I believe if you're a leader, if you're an activist, an advocate, each of us has a cause. I have master's in public policy, but I also specialize in something to be specific. In a country that has majority as young people, in foundational learning where every 8 in 10 children do not know how to read a basic sentence by 10. With youth unemployment beyond the roof, I think for me as a person, I still have more causes to fight for. And for now, that is where I will concentrate my efforts. Constitution is a book of lies. I think that is really well put, but where should we derive the motivation as young people to uphold? There is so much that looks to be good in that constitution, but in terms of implementation, it's different. Even in terms of policy, I have, again and again, even today, I think they're planning to launch the migration policy of Uganda. The best of the best is on paper, implementation zero. What am I trying to say? Oftentimes, for me, I just look at the constitution as deriving legitimacy from it. Does it mean we should hold our hands and cease not to fight for what we believe in? Because ideally, there's a contradiction between the rule of law and the institutions that are supposed to uphold the rule of law. But again, you're students of the law, you're coming out, so if you give up too early, what then is the future of this country? Because you're the same people that are going to be managing, or you're going to be in these institutions. But if you now start giving into the patronage and whatever looks like our status quo in the country, then we are doomed. Which also takes me to the other question about intimidation, which, for instance, I find them intertwined. Why? Because should intimidation push us away from participation? No. If anything, it should push us to courageous participation. Because we are young people. If you look at what young people are doing across the world, you looked at Nepal, young people overthrew a whole government. Again, I am not telling you to overthrow a government, but I'm showing you the capacity of young people to organize and push for the things that they believe in. There is a lot of shrinking youth participation in politics, just not university. I remember by the time I was at Makerere University Business School, I was running for guild president. Makerere here had a lot of campaigns. But at that time, we're joking around how now the whole debate has moved from, this is the ground where we train young politicians. But now when you see what leaders are doing, giving out sweets, flowers, and all of that, that's what I'm talking about. So when he says maybe we need to fight to bring back campaigns, beyond the campaigns, I think we also need to build an environment, because at the end of the day, you are the voters. So you can keep blaming, or they took the campaigns away. But again, you can either organize debates, there are things that you can organize that can bring your leaders together, the ones that are aspiring to serve you, and then you either subject them to an intellectual debate, find out how far they are willing to protect your rights as students, name it, go on. So for me, intimidation only calls for courageous participation, not actually shying away. The more the intimidation, the more you're pressed to organize yourself and find a way to actually meaningfully participate, not entirely run away from it. And then he raised the question of young people are participating in politics for selfish gain. That's true. I was in a youth election that is meant to be affirmative action, and people are spending billions of money that they can never recover, only because they have the ability to spend the money, but they cannot spend that money to go in a constituency, out an older person. In the end, we are saying we want more young people in parliament, but we are seeing also young people that are so empowered fighting in our spaces. Yeah, but again, does that mean you excuse yourself because those that are there for their selfish gain? Again, it's another reason for you to participate. Because if you do, then, if you close your eyes, you close your hands and not participate, that means someone else will participate that has the selfish gains you're talking about. It is one of the reasons some of us would leave. I had, the best offers to work whatever I wanted to do, because I studied ideally from a prestigious university. I don't like talking about it because it sounds elitist. But there's more conviction for me now to enter the space that is shrinking, the space that have people with selfish ambitions, because there is a greater cause, something you want to push. So again, is it reason enough for you to stay away, shy away? Or for me, I actually see it as enough reason for you leaders with moral conscience to actually step up in your constituency, in university politics? Because if you don't, there is someone there who will, and for them, they are not second guessing. Even if they are stammering, even if they do not even know what they're going to do for you, all they have is their courage. And that is why when you look at politics, usually it's those that do not do nothing that step up. You look at parliament, for over 500, but how many faces do you see on the floor of parliament? Less than 50, that's what I'm talking about. So for you, you're second guessing yourself because the space looks really too bad and too dirty. But there are people out there that are throwing themselves in, even when they stammer, even when they do not know what it's about, but because they have the courage to do that. And then lastly, use of technical knowledge, and then you went ahead and answered yourself. We have our spaces as young people. You know the reason as to why they switched off social media in campaign. Social media is powerful. The only problem now is also the elitists. You people who are educated, you have the knowledge, you also go on social media, your accounts either are just there, okay, yeah, you have LinkedIn accounts, but on Twitter and TikTok, you just create accounts to scroll or to watch what the rest of the world is doing. But again, that is one of our powers. That is where you can use your technical knowledge. I gave you an example of how there is things, bills, laws, you people have studied this, you understand it more than we do. Oftentimes there's a lot that goes on the floor of parliament that the public never understands the implication of it because they do not have the technical knowledge you have. It doesn't take a lot. Organize yourselves as whatever, maybe a group of friends with a backing in law. Get one of the bills, break it down for people to understand this is the implication of this bill that the parliament has voted for to that person, yeah? So as I conclude, there's been a lot, I feel a lot of energy within us. Let us not allow this energy to die out. The honest truth out there, the space is shrinking. There's a lot of self-censorship. Everyone feels like, nah, this is not my business. Everyone who should take up space feels like, I'm too educated for this. But again, it is upon us to step up and do something meaningful, do something contrary to what is happening. Don't to completely give up that this, no, you see the biggest problem we have is what we are dealing with is just not affecting us. It's affecting those that are even coming after us. And the more we hold our hands, no, we're not running away from it. History will judge us and it will keep up with us. I beg to submit.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ms. Julia. And lastly, before I close the panel, I would like to hand over to Ms. Sweetie just to throw more light on what Ms. Julia said. Thank you. Sweetie, over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Alicia. Thank you all for the questions. I'm going to start with a quote that I found quite intriguing, but also really true. It's by G.K. Chesterton. It says, "The reformer is always right about what is wrong, but is often wrong about what is right." I think all through history, and that's something we can all attest to, is that almost every person who came to criticize was right about what was wrong, but when they tried to put in structures, it didn't work out. That's a disclaimer. I may not have the right solutions, no one may have, but this is a call for the fact that we need to be willing to listen to each other and hear each other's views, even the older generation. I'm going to summarize my answers to the questions in 2 points. Okay, Jesse brought up a complicated question about the rights of minorities, and that's something that Uganda is going to continue grappling with because we have a strongly religious-leaning country that is not willing, especially to recognize those rights. Obviously, when we understand the law and we understand the rights of man, we understand that a man should not be killed because he believes a certain thing and someone else shouldn't. To that extent, it's not right, obviously, to kill someone because they're conforming to beliefs that we detest. It's our role, obviously, as lawyers to protect the life. And even when this appeals to Christians and you want to talk about reformation, you know, there's something Dr. Kabumba said. He said that the law can stop a man from killing me. To that extent, yes. It's important to advocate for their rights such that they are able to exist in society and are not killed and persecuted. But it's also not something, I guess, that should be shoved down like everyone's throat, especially those who are unwilling to accept it as a belief. Now going to the rest of the questions that were dealt with when it came to fear of political participation and all of that. I think, let me start with finding yourself. I understand that youth, we are young, and we still do struggle with trivial things that older people may not resonate with, like insecurities, fitting in, finding yourself, fear of even speaking, fear of popping up. And I think this is where Hamun's book comes in relevant, because it's about the crown you carry. I think it starts with yourself, and please do get a copy at the end. Yes, it's about finding yourself and being able to anchor yourself in the beliefs that you resonate with, because only when you are able to help yourself get out of whatever disillusionment you're facing, is the only way you can actually start to impact change in the world around you. In a study that was carried out by a certain organization around why the 2021 elections had very little youth participation, one of them was disillusionment. That meant that so many young people had so many other things on their mind. So until also as individuals we get a sense of clarity, a hierarchy of priorities of sorts, about what matters to us, about where our values align, it can be harder for us to look at the grander scheme of things and actually look into the country. The second thing is that I think it would be really important if we had a sort of coalition as young people. One thing that I see that's common in Uganda is that everyone is trying to do a startup, which is a good thing, but then the problem is that you have small groups of individuals trying to push for reforms in different areas, and you don't have that big numbers to actually create that effective push. When you look at how the Kenyan protests were done, it was so well organized. You're seeing that this area is going to have a protest, this area is going to have a protest. When they come together, it was such a heavy push on the government that the government had to go back and to change the policies that they had put in place. Another example is Hong Kong. I think one of the most prominent activists is Nathan Law. The way they structured to criticize the Beijing government when it was trying to impose a leader in Hong Kong is that they had created a sort of centralized form of advocating and informing the general public about policy reform, about how to effectively participate in governance and voting, that by the time they showed up on the streets to say this is not what we want, and the government had to actually go in a table, and they sent in just about 3 to 5 representatives who represented the views of the general population. So I think, yes, as Maurice said, as everyone else has said, I think we should organize ourselves. Don't just sit in the camps of maybe a political party, don't just sit in the camps as an NGO organization and you're just there. I think there should be links that connect activists and allow us to be able to sit down and say, this is the roadmap we're going to follow to effect change. Do we have people who know how to criticize the laws and actually go when it's time to criticize laws in parliament and present papers saying this is not enough? Do we have people who can actually lobby in government? And then I think another thing that we should not lose out on is the allies we have in the older generation. We have lecturers, we have some MPs, we have ministers who essentially sit in those positions, but they are not so aligned with they're not happy about what's happening. Are we able to get mentorship from them? Are we able to create a link that's strengthened such that even when we go in those rooms, we know we already have an ear, we have a foot on ground? I think that's really effective. We should not cut them off, but we should also be willing to learn from them because there's a wealth of experience they have. There are certain things that we may rebound and repeat and talk about again that maybe exist that they can educate us on about. I think basically that's what I think can be effective in putting in place the change we want to see. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sogwal. Before Nasty, in 1 minute, I'll hand over to Ms. Harmon just to also throw some more light.
Okay. I think most of the things have been said by Ms. Julia and Ms. Sweetie, but I think there is something that I really want to probably say again. It's about someone asked about empowering others, but there is fear, and how now when people are going for campaigns, they're using money and all that. It's no longer about, true leadership and all that. As someone that's really passionate about having other people empower others or about the youth, I think I would say that it's because of the mindset that these individuals have when they're going into these spaces. They now have this mindset of, if I couldn't get the money that the current MPs are getting, then the only means I could get them is that if I go for a position, get into that space, then I am going to get what they have. So instead of a mindset of, let me fight for good education, let me try to eradicate poverty, let me try to get better opportunities for people that are not employed, everyone is being selfish for interests that only benefit them. So I think it goes back to 2 questions that I want to leave you with. It's from the book. It says, if you remain silent today, who pays the price tomorrow? You're going to be the leader that is going to lead other people. You are the youth that is going to bring change, and you're the hope that this generation has. So if you remain silent, what cost are the people of tomorrow going to pay? So I think my conclusion remarks goes that whoever wants to lead in any space should be a generational leader, not only for their selfish interests, but to bring change. With that, yeah, thank you.